Kenny, thanks so much. Yeah, we had somebody ask a question earlier about how can I grow my ministry audience? And that's exactly what this series of um, rapid fire, like what you would go to a TED Talk, we're calling them tech talks. So you're going to have three approaches to to grow your audience, and specifically from an advertising angle. So first, I want to welcome Ben Martin to the stage. Ben is a digital strategist with 5Q. He has a lifelong fascination with branding and helping organizations help communicate their message in a way that really hits that target audience. So Ben, man, you've been in digital since 1996. I mean, that's almost as long back there about when Al Gore invented it. So welcome to the stage. We're excited to hear what you have to share specifically about the Google Ads grant. So Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Chad. Glad to be here this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, where you're joining us. I'm going to be talking about the Google Ads grant and how you can find success with that, even in the middle of a changing landscape. Because as you know, things can change rather quickly, especially on digital. So first, you do want to talk about what the Ads grant is, just to make sure everybody is familiar with that. I know it's already been mentioned this morning, at least in one of the breakouts. I'm going to talk about the opportunities you can find in search, in Google search. We'll touch a little bit on what content is, and we'll talk about success, what success looks like with the Ads grant. So what is the Google Ads grant? The first part of that is Google Ads. And so let's talk very briefly about that. Google Ads is the product that Google uses to manage advertising on all of their channels. So that includes YouTube advertising, search advertising, display ads that show up on websites and across the internet and mobile applications. So Google Ads is a big box, lots of different tools in that box. The Ads grant, that's that $10,000 a month that Google will give to qualified nonprofit organizations, and it can only be used for search ads. So it is part of Google Ads, but it's only for search ads. Search ads are those advertisements that pop up in your search results. You know, you type something in to Google, and you get your list of results, and usually at the top and at the bottom, there will be some results that have a little ad notification right next to them, designating they're a paid result. And so that is where you can place with the Google Ads grant. You can place there in those search results. It is up to $10,000 a month that you can get out of it, and it's provided absolutely free if you are a qualified nonprofit. You just have to join the Google for Nonprofits, which is a pretty painless process. Most 501c3s will qualify. There are some exclusions. I think like if you're an educational institution, you're excluded. There may be a couple of others. And then in order to keep it, you just have to maintain some best practices. You have to actually use it in order to keep it. And you've got to meet some best practice guidelines that Google lays out. They really are just best practices though. So they're offering a gift. They want to make sure that gift is being used and being used well. But they're not onerous to comply with in any way. So when you think about advertising through search ads, because that's what the Google Ads grant does, it is a little bit of a different way of looking at advertising. You know, normally when you think about advertising, you think about, okay, I'm going to identify an audience I want to reach and a platform I'm going to use, and I've got a message I want to get out there. I pay my money to the platform, I hand them my message, and the message goes out. It's kind of a broadcasting type of approach for most advertising. But it's not prescriptive like that with search advertising, because you're only going to show up when people search. If you think about your own Google search history, not too hard, but think about, what have you searched for this week? Maybe you searched for a recipe for something. Maybe you looked for an address for a local business or a website for a local business. Maybe you did some search for some Bible study tools for your small group, or, there could be a million things that you may have searched for. Well, you multiply that out times, the population of the United States. There are a lot of different searches that are happening on a lot of different topics. Search ads are going to show up in those results. So you want to think about what are people searching for, and then you want to try to find a piece of content and an ad that makes sense in that context. So the more volume that people are searching for in an area, the more opportunity there is. We saw this recently during the quarantine, the volume of people searching for activities for their kids, coloring books and worksheets and kids videos, things like that. It just skyrocketed. The volume for searching for that went way up because that was that was what was needed at the time when everybody's kids staying home. So you want to think about what are the areas where people are searching. That's where you're going to have opportunity. And just like that, trends are going to change based on events, based on calendar items. So, you know, the quarantine experience over the last few months, that was a major impact, had a major change in what people were searching for. There are some things that are a little bit more predictable. You know when Easter's coming, you know when Christmas is coming, you know that people are going to be searching for things around those things, those calendar items. And of course, you know, things that just happen in the news can have an impact on what's going to change. So when you're thinking about placing in an ad that's going to show up in search, you want to be thinking about what opportunities are out there, what are people searching for, what are people searching for right now, and you want to try to stay on top of that. And the key to connecting with people in search is your content. Content is king. I wish there was a better phrase to use because everybody's heard that, and when you say it, people are automatically just start saying, "Okay, yeah, I know what content is king." I've heard that before, but it's true. It still is on top of the game. And so when you're placing your ads in search, the content of the ad has to be relevant to the search query, what people are searching for. The ad that you show up, it needs to relate to what it is that they're searching for. And so you're going to come up with keywords that those are the search terms that you're going to try to place in. You want those keywords to be relevant to the content of your ad. And the third piece, if they click on your ad, which is what you want them to do, you want them to land on a landing page on your website. That landing page content has to match up with the ad that they clicked on, so the experience follows through. I clicked on this and it gave me a page that was related to that, and it's got to answer the question. It's got to be a connection between what they were searching for and what you're providing. So the ad quality, the quality of the ad experience is really dependent on the content that you create and the content that you provide. So you want to develop content that is going to serve the search audience. That's the content you're creating. A lot of times people will come to their Google ads and they'll think, oh, okay, well, I want to be able to promote getting donors, so I'm going to connect my donation page to this ad and then put out an ad saying, trying to connect people in there. And that quite often is not something that works really well. What works well is to actually look at your content from the perspective of a brand new user who doesn't know anything about your ministry, who's just landed on your website, and they've landed on that specific page. They didn't even necessarily come to the home page, but they came to that piece of content that you've created. It may be an article, maybe a landing page. And what's the experience going to be like for that person who has no other reference about who you are or what you do? That's kind of the eyes that's the eyes that are going to be on that when somebody clicks through from a Google ad. And so you really want to be thinking about that content and how it's going to be perceived, and then kind of work backwards to how can I connect that to what people are going to be searching for. The other key piece of that is once somebody does land on your page, you want them to convert, right? You want to get a name, you want to get an email address, you want to get some piece of information so that they haven't just landed and disappeared, but that you've actually started to create a relationship. So you want to present a meaningful and relevant conversion opportunity on that landing page in that content. That might be accomplished by putting a form on the page. If it's easy for you to be able to do that, that's a great way to do it. Sometimes if you're working with like a blog post, it may not be as easy to integrate a form there. You might be able to use a tool, like a personalization tool, to be able to actually overlay a form that on that page, or to have a pop-up on that page that will help to create a conversion opportunity for the people who are coming from your Google ads. Because you definitely want to be capturing those folks. And you've done all of that. You've got it all in place. How are you going to find success with this? How are you going to make sure that you're actually spending up to the $10,000 and that you're actually finding growth with your Google ads? Because again, as things change, you've got an actively moving target, right? You're trying to hit people with their searches, and they're all over the place. Here are some things that we have found that really work well in terms of getting your ads grant to perform well, to have success month in and month out. You want to manage it actively. You don't want to just set it. It's not a set it and forget it tool. We've found that you get the best results if you actually are checking in on that account 2 or 3 times a week, just to make sure that nothing has gone wrong. Just make sure things are working. And about once a week, you want to be trying to do something active in there. You want to be trying a new ad, creating a new ad, or reviewing your keywords and trimming out ones that aren't working any longer, adding new keywords. You want to be taking some sort of meaningful action in there about once a week. You also want to try new ads regularly, because search is a constantly evolving, constantly changing thing. What people are looking for is always changing. The Google algorithm is always changing. And so you always want to be trying new ads to see if you can discover an area where people are searching, an area where people might start to respond to something. So you want to be creating new content, trying new ads. You want to do that on a regular basis. And the third thing is you want to play nice with Google. Google is going to make recommendations and suggestions in your Google Ads account. You want to take those recommendations and suggestions. You want to do what they're doing, what they're suggesting, because they control the platform. They're making suggestions that are based on the data they have. And when your account is following all the rules that they've put forward, they are more likely to present your ads in a search result. So you're going to get your best performance, your best presence in search if you play nice with Google. So if Google suggests, hey, you should have a phone number listed on your website, get a phone number listed on your website. It will make a difference. So a lot of people want to have one thing they can do as when you attend these sessions. I know I always look for that, like, all right, what's the action that I can take? I would say if you don't have ads grant, get yourself ads grant. That's kind of a qualifying thing. Again, it's not a difficult process to go through to sign up for the Google for Nonprofits. It's pretty simple to go through that, and then you can get your ads grant set up. We actually do have a guide online, and then they'll be sharing the URL, because I can't remember all of it to speak it for you, but we'll be posting the URL in the chat and on Slack, where we've got a guide that to help you walk through the process of getting Google Ads grant. If you already have Google Ads grant, here's the one thing that I would suggest that you do. Make sure that you have conversion tracking configured with your website, so that your website and Google Ads both know about a conversion, what a conversion looks like. And then in Google Ads, switch your bidding to use maximize conversions bidding, because when you do that, it'll actually allow you to get the maximum amount of spend when you're bidding. You don't have to worry about any limits or caps when you use maximize conversions. So that's one step that you can take with your Google Ads grant that'll help you to improve your performance today. So I'll hand it back to you, Chad.
Absolutely, man, that was great. We're going to take questions at the end of the session, so please feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we'll be ready to answer those. Next up is Doug Weiss. Yeah, I first met Doug when he was leading the charge at Jesus Film and around their social media efforts. He's currently with with the Giving Company as their digital media manager. And Doug is also, he's going to be starting a podcast soon. And you can find more about that at ministrymarcom.com. So Doug's got a ton of experience. He's going to be sharing with us about what does it look like to build a channel in the advertising. What's it look like to build a channel advertising plan? So Doug, welcome to the Digital Ministry Conference. We're excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much, Chad. It is really great to be here. Yeah, so as Chad said, would love to just dive into here about really building a channel advertising plan. So this is really thinking about going beyond Facebook. So I loved looking at the poll before this session. So what I want to dive into is looking at what are the current opportunities, what does channel advertising look like, really what is working now, what I've seen being part of the giving company, and then also just an opportunity to kind of share my one biggest tip from a digital advertising action plan. So right now you have an unprecedented opportunity to engage with new people.
Hey, Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to jump in. Your slides aren't coming through quite right.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Yeah, there looks like all we can see is the first one and only see about half of that slide.
Okay, let's see here.
Sorry about that, folks. A little bit of technical difficulty, which on a scope of this with hundreds of folks here, we're expect a little bit like that. Now we see you, no slide share. There it is. All right, I'll pop back out and let you take it away. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Chad, for letting me know. So yeah, right now people are, online more engaged. People are attending online events more. People are watching more video content than ever. People are opening and reading more email, and people are listening to more audio and podcasts. And so what does that look like for you is really thinking about, do you have a channel advertising plan in place? So just think about this for a moment. According to Google research, 90% of multiple device owners switch between screens to complete tasks, using an average of 3 different combinations every day. And so within that in mind, you have to really engage your customers in many different ways. And so the first approach to a channel advertising plan is to look at omni-channel advertising. So omni-channel advertising really focuses on your customer. Your customer by himself or herself. It's about engaging with them in many different ways. So if you take a look at your current properties, like how are you engaging with them? First of all, are you creating a personalized way to talk to them? When I mean personalization, I mean something like, Journey or something like that, some platform where you can engage the customer exactly where they're at. And with search, are you talking to that individual customer through through different searches that they do? And on your website, are you giving them an opportunity to have an account where they can log in and get more of a personalized opportunity? And then email, instead of just sending a blanket email, what does it look like to send a more personalized email? And then also on social media, engaging people with groups. And then on mobile, what does that look like? And so thinking about this omni-channel approach really focuses on the individual customer themselves. And then the next step is really looking at building a multi-channel advertising plan. And that's what we do a lot here at Giving Company, is we put ministries in front of big audiences through our different brands. And so when you think about building a multi-channel advertising plan, it's really focusing on your company and bringing in the new customers. And then as you bring in these new customers, then that's when your omni-channel plan really goes into play. So thinking about these different multi-channel opportunities on different websites outside of your own. We got to look at display ads, look at video pre-roll. Video pre-roll is basically, you have a 30-second ad that you could put in front of some video content that is out there on another site that your ideal customer may visit. And then email. What does email look like for you in purchasing lists and looking for opportunities to really use email to engage new people. And then CPL is cost per lead. Using a combination of Facebook and also landing pages and email, getting new leads to your ministry as donors or new customers. So this is really important as you go, think beyond what you're doing just internally on your site. And so I want to look at a few cases that we've seen just here at Giving Company of successes of ministries that we worked with and kind of how they've utilized a multi-channel and omni-channel approach. And so one particular ministry, they basically had an ebook that they put together that really began to really answer questions, go through different things during these uncertain times. And what they did was we created a CPL opportunity for them to really drive leads to a landing page to be able to download this ebook. And so what we saw from the emails that we sent out, we saw anywhere between 20 to a 62% open rate. Each email had a compelling headline, image, and text. So that's something to think about right now, as a ministry. What is some content that you have that you could create, an ebook out of to drive, new leads to? And then just from the landing page itself, so these emails that drove to the landing page, this ministry, saw a 51.13% conversion rate of people who, elected to get this ebook. And on this landing page was really matching headline and copy and an opt-in form that was very similar and comparative to what the person who received the email saw. So, and then in the next case study here, we worked with a university, or we still are working with a university on a lead campaign to drive prospective students to their online program. And so they've been doing this for a while, presenting an opportunity to learn about different programs that they can do online. And, these type of things can kind of be a slow kind of crawl to get new leads, because somebody may not be, necessarily in the place where they're looking to do online, or they're checking that out. But so we were trying to figure out, okay, what do we do to generate a more compelling approach to getting new leads? And so we took content from this ministry and developed a series of videos that were more storytelling based, and we put them out there on Facebook and drove two cent video views to this to these videos that were more compelling in storytelling around a student's experience on campus. So this video series, not only we have seen has been more successful in driving leads, it's actually driven the cost of the CPL, the cost per lead down. So that's something to really think about as well in your ministry. You know, what do you have any video content that you could put together into a series that would really kind of tell a compelling story to bring more awareness and more interest to your ministry and what you're doing? So, and then I'd love to just share with you one tip here from this digital advertising action plan. So, and really, I've seen with the different ministries that we worked with is that this is really key in making sure that you're having successes in all the advertising you're doing. And that's really going in and doing a dive in evaluating your digital plumbing. You know, making sure like all your Google Analytics, your tag manager, your pixel, everything is all in place on your sites, on your landing pages, and that they're all connected together. So it's just a matter of, you know, going into the different platforms and evaluating those connections. And also goals, you know, have you set up Google goals and events to really track the journey that people are taking with you. And then making sure that they're firing correctly. You know, you could get to a place where somebody has completed a step on one page, and then that's kind of where your pixel ended. But if it's not on the completion page, you don't then have any metrics on that completed task. So it's just really making sure that you have everything all in place. So I'd love for you to see the other action steps that are in this plan. So I've actually created a download for you. So if you go to ministrymarcom.com/digital ad action plan, you can download it there and be able to you know, go through the plan and step by step. So thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Doug. Man, there's a lot to cover in digital advertising. And I know we've got some questions already flowing in from these first two sessions of Tech Talks. Please keep those questions coming in after our next talk, which is Josh Kashorik. He's going to be sharing with us about the 5 levers that you should be measuring to be able to multiply impact. Now, Josh is a 5Q team member. He's our marketing director at Journey and 5Q. His superpower is the ability to convert data into high-performance marketing campaigns. I know, and he's been a great addition to the team for the last couple of years here at 5Q. When he isn't scouring spreadsheets and graphs for the next campaign, you'll find him outdoors and spending time with his wife, and I think he's got 5 kids. So Josh, welcome, and we're excited to hear what you have to share.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it. And I mean, really thank you everybody for sticking with us this late in the afternoon. I know there's been a lot of information, a lot of exciting sessions. I was really encouraged this morning just seeing everybody's role. You know, we have people all the way from executive directors down to people that are, you know, just getting into digital and everywhere in between. And so one thing that I think all of us have in common is if you spend any time at all in the digital space, you'll know that one of the most exciting parts about digital is that there are so many opportunities. You can essentially do anything you can think of. The downside of that really is that it can very quickly become overwhelming because there are so many options available. And what I want to do today is really give you a framework from a data standpoint. As Chad mentioned, I do like data a whole lot. So a framework from a data standpoint to allow you to actually evaluate these options and choose wisely the things that are going to have the most impact. And as I talk about these are what we call at 5Q the 5 multipliers of impact. So these are things that really have the ability to have a compounding effect and drive multiples of impact for your ministry over time. And not every single one of these will apply to every initiative that you're doing, but one or more of them will apply to every initiative. And they give you a great lens to actually drive that focus and know what's important. So I'm going to run through these really quickly with some of the pros and cons to each of them. So traffic is the first one, and that's one that you probably have all thought of. You know, we need to get more traffic to our website, more listens to our podcasts, more listeners to our radio shows, you know, just more foot traffic, even if you have a, you know, a physical location. And traffic's also one of the easiest to modify. So, you know, you heard Ben talk about the ads grant. You heard Doug talk about creating a channel plan for your ads, and really growing your traffic is something that you can do fairly quickly and fairly simply because it is so easy to modify and so easy to manipulate. One of the downsides is you really need to pair traffic with one of the other multipliers. So you need to pair it with conversion rates or engagements or retention so that you know that the traffic you're getting is more than just numbers. It's really meaningful people coming to your website, people engaging and driving that impact. The next one is engagement. This one I heard touched on several times in earlier sessions. This is actually in a lot of cases where the ministry happens, right? So this is where you're interacting with people, where you're building that trust, where you're sharing those stories that drive them to have a stronger commitment to your organization and a generosity, you know, eventually. So one of the downsides is, you know, it takes time to do those interactions, but really this is where your ministry focus comes into play. So you should be spending time here anyway. But another challenge really is that it's difficult to attribute to revenue. And one of the reasons that's a downside is because a lot of times your marketing budget, it becomes really hard to get marketing budget for anything that doesn't generate revenue directly. And that's because we're all ministries. We want to be good stewards of you know, the money we've been given and make sure that it has the most impact. But because of that attribution issue, oftentimes it's hard to get budget and it's hard to really do this engagement properly. So that's one I would encourage, especially the leaders and people who are in management and decision makers, to really think about your engagement and how it can be directly impactful on your ministry, because that is one that gets overlooked fairly regularly. But it also is one that impacts all the other multipliers. So more engaged people are likely to give more higher dollar donations. They're likely to stay around and donate for longer periods of time. They're also likely to convert to donors in the first place. The third one is conversion rates. This one you may know from e-commerce terminology, business speak, but it is something that actually can be focused not just on donations or product sales. If you have product sales, it can be something that is also focused on impact. So, for example, if you have a daily devotional email, how many people are converting to sign up for that? That's an area where you're feeding people in the scripture every day. And so that's a real ministry impact. How many people are signing up for that? What's the conversion rate? Also, once they sign up for it, how often do they open those emails? How often do they click through? So you can look at conversion rates from a money standpoint, which is kind of the more common and easy one to look at, but you can also look at it from a ministry impact standpoint. And then average value is one, you know, whenever we assign the term value, especially in ministry, we kind of cringe a little bit, but this also, it can be tied to average order value if you sell products, average donation value, but it can also be applied to ministry aspects. So if you have, say, sermon audios online, what's the average number of episodes that people listen to? What's the average number of resources that they download that they can share with others? So value is not limited to dollars here, and really can be applied to impact. This one, changing the average value, is one of the more challenging ones. So it can really drive big results over time, but it is something that you're going to have to test quite a bit, try a lot of things. Fortunately, it usually is limited in scope, so the changes that you're going to be testing might be limited to 1 or 2 pages or 1 or 2 areas of your site, which helps you focus in on that. And then last, we have retention. This one really is the biggest potential for long-term growth. We talked earlier. I think the current retention rate of donors for nonprofits on average is about 45%. When you look specifically at first-time donors, I think that drops down to the low 20s. So more than half of the donors that gave to you this year are not going to give to you next year if you're an average ministry, average nonprofit. So this one, being able to retain donors, retain supporters, convert people to those monthly donations, that is going to have the biggest potential long term, because that becomes revenue that you can really count on if it's been sustained over time. This one does require really coordination across the entire organization, because you have to make a commitment really to add value to those donors, to communicate, to continue showing your impact, sharing those stories. And so it is kind of a bigger project, but it is one that has the biggest potential for long-term growth of your ministry. So that was a lot, but I did want to show, as a data person, I like math and I like numbers. I try to limit the math to 1 slide. So hopefully you'll see the impact here. And I did go with donations just because that's the easiest to show. So this is what it would look like really if somebody, if you were able to increase each of those multipliers by 20%. So if you had 10,000 visitors a month, a donor conversion rate of 1%, an average donation value of $100, and the average of 45% donor retention, the first year's gift would be 10,000. First year's gift total would be 10,000. The second year, because only 45% of those are giving again, would be 4,500. So your total would be 14,500 over the course of that 2-year expanse. When you add 20% to each of those, you'll find that it grows over 70%. Your revenue grows over 70%. So that bumps from 14,000 to over 25,000. And the exciting news about this is really that if you haven't been looking at these metrics and you haven't consistently been working to improve them, you're going to find that 20% is a very low number. For example, if your website currently gets 3,000 visitors or less, simply signing up for the ads grant and leveraging that to the fullest can increase your traffic 100% or more. The same with conversion pages. If you haven't been doing conversion rate optimization, reviewing your conversion pages, there's a very good chance that there's actually something broke that's really easy to fix on one of your conversion pages. So just running through those and making sure everything's working properly will likely give you a strong boost in conversion rates. So this sounds technical. It might sound scary if you're not a data person, but really what it comes down to is answering a handful of questions. So where can I find this data, and what's my benchmark, or what is What am I getting right now? How much traffic am I getting right now? Then looking at what's the biggest factor impacting this. So if you do have traffic coming to your website from a lot of sources, then there might be one that's driving the bulk of the traffic, and that presents an opportunity. Or you might look at it and find you're not driving traffic from a lot of sources, and your big opportunity is that you can expand that out. And then what can I change? What change can I make today that will impact this metric? And that's really what you want to start testing. Start out, keep it simple, and then as you set up the test, you let it run for a little while, and then you come back to that data and say, did my test have a significant impact? And then what's the next test? So it's really just going through that and continuing on with testing. So I have created a habits template, because what we want to do is make this not a one-time thing, but we want to make it something that you do continually, that continual improvement. If you go to digitalministryconference.com/habits, you'll be able to download this template. And you'll notice that there are 5 business days, 5 multipliers. I've actually set it up so that you only have to look at one each day. And I've set it up so you actually only answer one of those questions each week, which means it really does not take very much of a time commitment if you follow this template to build in that daily habit of improving your multipliers and growing your organization. So hopefully you'll be able to make time and see your impact grow. Thank you.
Man, Josh, that was excellent. Very good practical tips. And I'm sure that web address to that habits template, that's available in the chat room. The chatters are dropping it in there. So if you missed that, also these slides and all these presentations are going to be available after today. It should be available as soon as tomorrow. So can I ask Ben and Doug to come back online? Man, you guys gave some really, really good practical tips, and the Q&A, the box is lighting up with some of the questions that folks are being asked. And it's really fascinating to me just to see how each one of your talks kind of tied together. Started with a very micro Google Ads grant. If you're not using it, use it. And then to a little bit broader, how do we use multipliers? How do we use all the different channels that are available to us? And then it's not just about getting people to come, paint, spin, and advertising, but all the different levels, those 5 different levers of engagement to help multiply, and then just the practicality of adding it into some daily habits. So first question that Andy asked, actually Jonathan, several people are asking just about the Google Ads grant. And so Ben, I'm going to direct this question to you, but the others, if you guys want to jump in as well, feel free to. Google Ads grant, at one time, maybe they still do, they were asking you to sign something about your hiring practices when you sign up to be able to qualify for that grant. And so a lot of folks are asking, is that still an issue? Is it a roadblock? How would you recommend getting around that if it is? Or should we not go around that? Could you guys just talk about that? What's the reality? What's the state of that currently?
Yeah, that's an important thing to cover. Thank you to everybody who brought that up. It is part of the agreement. You have to affirm for your organization, if you're going to use any of the Google for Nonprofits suite, that your organization does not discriminate against any group of people in their service, their programs, or in their hiring. And it expressly says, including on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. So that is something that you definitely want to be aware of. I've worked in organizations before who have considered this, and they felt that if they didn't have a specific policy that was stating that they were going to discriminate in those areas, that they were okay. You would definitely want to make sure that you're talking to leadership about this. You want to be on the same page with HR. Those two groups may want to consider talking to legal counsel, because you want to make sure everybody's on the same page about how you're going to interpret that and how it applies to you, because it is significant. And if you're using the Google for Nonprofits for more than just Ads Grant, if you're using it for free Google Docs and free Gmail and for the free YouTube services. It's a pretty big package of things, and those things could become costly if you have to start paying for them instead of getting them for free. So definitely something to be aware of, and I think there is some opportunity to be open for interpretation as to how it applies to your specific organization, but you do want to make sure that everybody in your organization is on the same page about how you're going to respond to that.
Great, thanks, Ben. Another question about Google Ads grant is if you have, Alex asked if we have a large sprawling organizations with many relatively independent departments, so does each department sign up for an ads grant, or how do we spread that about so that there's fair play against it? Can you talk about that complexity size of a ministry? And Doug and Josh, if you have input, feel free to jump in as well.
That's a really good question. We've worked with some clients who do have those kind of large sprawling ministries. If you are all operating as one entity, you do have to use just one Google Ads account. And so then it just becomes a practice of being good to your neighbor in terms of how you're managing that resource and organizing things in the account. We use separate campaigns for different parts of a ministry. The nice flip side to that is that it gives you a lot of different ways and a lot of different opportunities to be trying new things and new content. So you can throw a lot of things up against the wall and see what sticks. Ben,
let me just ask that. Is it easy inside of Google to have multiple people manage one account, as it were, for the Google Ads grant? Is that fairly simple to do, or can you organize that, or do you need one person to manage it for everybody?
You can have multiple users who have administrative access to the Google Ads account. The one thing is they will have access to every part of it. So you can't specify this person only works on this campaign, that person only works on that campaign. But you can share it with multiple people. So you just got to make sure you stay in communication, stay on the same page.
So it is okay to have multiple people managing the campaign, or you could just have one person doing it for lots of different departments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Good. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I was going to say that if you've got a huge organizations that technically has multiple legal entities, you can actually get more than one Google Ads account. That becomes it's a more complex thing. Probably nobody on this call who's dealing with that, but you can look into that if you have a really, really big organization.
So we actually do that with Giving Company. So we, because Giving Company has 4 different entities under it, we are able to have, actually we run 2 Google brand accounts, and so we run 2 brands within each account just by adding the additional domains. And so we're able to do that because of separate 501c3 numbers and all of that. So it's been effective, and so we have one legacy $40,000 grant and then also a $10,000 grant that we're able to really utilize.
Great, thanks, Doug. Thanks for that insight. So some Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous or Miss Anonymous asked, how exactly do you set up conversions? And this came through, I think it was during Doug's talk. So could you talk anything about how do you set up conversions?
Yeah, so there are several different conversions you can set up. You can set up conversions within your Facebook ads. That's really looking at different the URLs that you use in your ads. You always want to use kind of UTM tracking codes. So Google has a tool in which you can add those kind of UTMs in there, and so you can set your campaign, and then you can set your channel variables. And when you do that, then in that ad is clicked on, then that basically sends that information then to Google Analytics that this is where that person came from. And then when that person, say they go to a landing page and then they sign up, on your landing page you have your Facebook pixel, and then you also have your Google tags on there. And then when you do that, then that carries on the next step of kind of their journey, and that marks another mark into Google, a part that's part of this conversion. And then finally is once they get to a thank you page, then there on Facebook you can set different tags that say completion, complete registration, and in Google you can set goals of what that thank you page URL is. And so through using those different tools, then you're able to track a person all the way from when they see an ad to their completed task, just by setting up those different kind of tags and pixels, for their conversion.
Doug, I love how you answered that. You answered that all the way through the user journey, and which is fantastic. Some ministries, though, are like, they just heard what you say and they were just like, oh, that sounds like so much. I don't know the first place to start. If they could only implement one of the things that you just talked about, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, that one thing would be to install Google tracking on your website.
So that'd be the Google Analytics tracking your website.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I was already making the assumption that an organization had that, but you're absolutely right. I'd affirm that. I was also thinking the UTM codes, because
yes,
I know UTM codes, you can use that to track more than just the advertising. You can use it for your emails, you can use it on your website, so you can get a full org picture of where folks are coming from.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you aren't familiar with Google Analytics and haven't looked at the conversion tracking, it might sound like it's out of your reach, but it really isn't. For the most part, if the confirmation page, so when somebody fills out a form or completes a donation, if your form redirects to a confirmation page that people can get to only by filling out that form, Google actually just has a field where you add in that URL and you hit save. So it's really a copy and paste standpoint for the most part. There are some other technical ways if your form doesn't redirect, but if it does, it really is copying, pasting, and anybody can do it.
So a lot of what we've talked about is like taking the what a for-profit organization would do and think about in terms of the advertising and bring it into the ministry space. How can a ministry measure ROI when it comes to the dollars that they're spending in this multi-channel approach? And I'm going to open that up to whoever wants to jump and tackle that one. But how do you measure ROI in a ministry context for the dollars that you're spending on advertising?
Yeah, I'll add that you kind of, the first thing we want to do is kind of establish your LTV, which is your lifetime value of your donor or your customer. It's what is this in kind of commercial marketing, it's like, what's this customer worth to me, but it's really what is this, what kind of value do I want to see this person be, and when kind of know exactly what that lifetime value is of the individual, it can help you then really measure like what you spend on advertising and what are the other things that you do to be able to engage with that person.
Yeah, that's good, Doug. Any other thoughts on measuring ROI for return on income for your spends?
Yeah, I think for ministries, and this is part of what I was trying to cover with the 5 multipliers, is sometimes ROI is not measured by dollars that come in. Sometimes it's measured by kingdom impact. So you may be looking at things like people who have said they've committed their lives to Christ from your content, or small group leader material where that people are sharing that and sharing the gospel with other people. So calculating that ROI is really about looking at the impact that you want to have and comparing it, really comparing the channels that you're using to see which one's driving the best results.
You know, that's really good. Yeah. Ben, anything else to add on that, on ROI? Because I know you have worked on that both from serving lots of different ministries, but you've also worked inside of several nonprofits. How have you seen folks approach the ROI question?
Yeah, I think just to echo what's already been said, you know, you really have to determine within the ministry, within the organization, what are the things that count? What are the conversions that count for you? What are the goals you're trying to achieve? Because it may not be a monetary one. It may be something else. And you establish what those metrics are you're trying to work towards, and then you try to work that into your ROI conversation. So as you're looking at, it might simply be a number of names added to a list, and so your return on the investment might be list growth. It might be something as simple as that. So you definitely want to make sure it's something that you're a conversation you're having in the organization, so that you get everybody on the same page and everyone's driving towards the same goals.
Yeah, that's good. Asking the question, how do we measure success for this before you start it, can help determine that as you go along. Somebody is asking about benchmarks. Like how do you know if what you're doing is truly effective? Like if you're just in a silo, you're not seeing what other organizations are doing. Take cost per lead, like one of the tactics that Doug was talking about. What is a good CPL rate? So where are sources that you get good benchmarks that you can be comparing to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think it really depends on your field, your area, your kind of your ministry, and looking at what basically what your goals are first, and also what your budgets are. So as far as going to a place to say, okay, here are all the benchmarks, for your particular area. I can't really point to one particular source, but I think it's just it's a matter of trying out some things and kind of really kind of saying as an individual ministry, what are the goals I want to reach, and then that can kind of help really give light to what your benchmarks will be.
I'll just, thanks, Doug. That's helpful. And before I turn it over to Josh and Ben to give any insight, I know one resource that's been helpful to us over the years. Back in the day, there was a company called marketingsherpa.com that had lots of here's how you're doing benchmarks from an email standpoint. Really today, for the nonprofit space, Tim Kachuriak over at Next After has done a great job tracking the different effectiveness, the areas that they've done. And I don't know, I think he's got a lab or something like that, but if you Google Next After, you'll find some really good nonprofit funding benchmarks that you can start with. Those would be some areas. Other sources, and I'd encourage you, if you're an attendee and sources for benchmarks that you've seen, drop those in the chat, both in the Slack as well as chat here, because I'm sure that there's others that would like to learn from that as well. Any other input, Josh or Ben, on benchmarks? How do we track benchmarks?
There is another organization, M&R, M and the plus sign, the letter R. They do an annual benchmark report for the nonprofit world. It's not strictly ministry focused, so it is broader. It includes secular nonprofits, but I've found that their data has been really helpful in terms of looking at email statistics and website donation statistics and donor retention statistics. I found it's been useful to be able to use that data.
Yeah, M+R is a good one. Also, I know Blackbaud, they do surveys from time to time that gets published. They have some white papers. Those are good, some benchmarking sources. Those are good. So another question is around if you have multiple teams to contribute to the different multipliers. So Josh, this one's going to be for you. What are some of the tips to ensure that all of the folks are on the same page when it comes to the goals that you have for each one of those multipliers? And specifically thinking the marketing side versus the donor side, how do you get them to work together?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a really common question. And this is also part of why, as we organize this conference, we asked everybody to invite their whole team, right? So that you can have a common language to talk about, and so that you can get a full picture of what everybody's working on and what's important to them. We personally at 5Q, we love to create a dashboard that we talk about in terms of kind of critical numbers. What's this one multiplier that your department's looking at? What's this one multiplier that your department's looking at? And then we pull them all together, just real high level numbers, not all of the details, so that you guys can all get together in one room, know as an overview what everybody's working on and what's important to them, and then you're able to talk through how you can work together, how you can help each other, and really create that synergy.
You know, you mentioned a dashboard or one place where you can be looking at those. Yeah, I know one tool that we've used both internally for our company metrics, as well as that we're starting to use for clients as well, as agency analytics. It gives you a dashboard that you can go, and some of those things are pre-plugged in, but then you can pull data in from Google Sheets and things. I mean, it's not super powerful, but it gives you a really good visual view of where those key metrics are, and allows you to ask the question, what do we need to do to change to tip the needle to keep moving it in the right direction? So somebody else asked, I understand that Google Analytics and Google Ads are important, but how can I manage all of that with such a small team? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I'll jump in. So we recommend some things that create efficiencies. So you can, for example, the question about conversion tracking, right? You can actually set up conversions in your Google Ads account, and you can set up those conversions in your Google Analytics account. Or you can actually link the two accounts, set up those conversions once in your Google Analytics account, and then they're shared to your Google Ads. So there are lots of ways that you can actually connect things together, automate processes, and really reduce those redundancies to make it a lot easier to manage.
So what I hear you saying, Josh, is some of these things that may take a little bit of investment up front, but once you have it set up, you can be outputting to some charts and graphs, so you can then it's just a matter of developing the habit of checking those on a regular basis, identifying the insights, and then identifying the actions that you want to take after you look at those.
Yeah, and reducing it down to those critical numbers makes it really easy, because I mean, Google Analytics alone has, I don't know, it seems like hundreds of reports, right? You can look at any detail that you want, but you don't have to look at that every day. And really, there's maybe 2 or 3 reports that are going to get you 80% of the data that you need. So simplifying what you need from that. And then for those who weren't on the fundraising post-COVID, Brad Davies gave the recommendation of only using tools that play nice with other tools, right? Because you have to get them all connected. You have to get them all speaking the same language and building a central place for all of that data, so that you're able to leverage all of those tools, but you're not spending a lot of time managing all of those individually.
Yeah, that's good. So a little investment up front can yield many rewards down the road. Josh and Doug and Ben, I would like you guys, just as we're getting ready to close out, move into the next area, what if you could leave the audience with one thing as it relates to the advertising trends, what would that one thing be? Ben, I'm going to start with you.
I was hoping you'd call me last. No. I think the important thing to keep in mind with advertising trends is that it's a constantly changing world, and so you just need to stay on top of whatever advertising channels you choose to engage in. And there's too many for any one person to manage, but choose the ones you're going to engage in, and then stay on top of them. Make sure that you are checking. Don't just set it and forget it and come back 6 months later and find out what happened, but stay on top of it. Make sure that it's still working, still accomplishing the goals that you want out of it, and still reaching the audience you want it to reach.
Yeah, that's really good. Good. Thanks, Ben. Doug, you're up.
Yeah, I would say, and this sounds so simple, but so many people don't do it, is create a plan. Sit down to plan before you do your tactics. And with a good plan, I think you become most efficient. And within that plan, plan out small tests that you can do. And then if those small tests work well, then go bigger with them.
I love that idea of starting small. Send out the bullets before you bring out the big guns. And Josh, your final tip.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be actually real simple. Look at your data. So many people have questions, just like the person that asked, how can I manage all of this? If you look at your data, you'll see where you are and know how realistic it is to get to where you want to go, but also you'll know the steps to get there. And so you have it available, it's free. If you look at another question that came in was, what's your favorite report? I look at the source medium report as my starting place in Google Analytics. If you look at that, it gives an overview of every channel that's sending traffic to your website. And if you have the conversion tracking set up, it tells you which ones are actually generating those conversion points. So it's one report. Look at it, and then you can know where you are as a starting point.
Guys, thanks so much. This has been super helpful, and especially as we're thinking about coming out of COVID and getting ready to allocate some dollars to advertising to help grow, and then just remembering all those different levers that you can be using to pull. It's about engaging the audience well as they go throughout that user journey. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And again, this session, the slides that they shared, the insights, those are all going to be available to you after the conference for you to be able to share with your team, to be able to go back and take notes and take away. Hopefully you've got at least one thing that you can walk away from this session that you can be applying when you get back to the office.